Well, Prynhawn da, diolch yn fawr, Graham. Thank you very much, Graham. Yn falch iawn I fod gyda hi, Prynhawn. I'm really pleased to be with you today, to be at a very exciting and vibrant conference. Again, congratulations to WCVA for the way you have delivered to this at this particularly difficult time, a most appropriate conference in terms of reaching out to all the opportunities that you need to have and grasp and be innovative, as well as have nerves of steel in terms of the pressures hanging on a wire, funding and fundraising in difficult times. And I do want to start by saying how clearly I understand the concerns and worry that many of you have today here, as so many third sector organisations across Wales share those concerns regarding your ability to deliver in support of the causes that you are most passionate about. And of course, I think it's very appropriate that your annual conference with a discount is going to be focusing on impact and what we can do with those scarce resources. And of course, that is the key challenge for me as your finance minister. And I think it is about how we can share together, government, third sector, how we can deliver and make the most impact about those causes that we are most passionate about. And we do all face that similar challenge in demonstrating that every pound raised is going to be used well and wisely to achieve the right impact, the right outcomes. We all have to be creative and innovative, not only thinking about what works, but also how we can work together much more proactively across the sector, between sectors, so that we can achieve more, often by pooling our resources. And the Welsh Government is focused on working in partnership with the third sector, very evident, of course, in the voluntary sector scheme. And in fact, I'm meeting with the voluntary sector scheme representatives on finance over the next few weeks, particularly because I want to touch base with them directly, with you directly, on the draft budget. But if you look at the voluntary sector scheme, which of course 12 years ago, when we came into being as the Assembly government, I had a role myself in taking the lead then, ministerial lead on voluntary sector. If you look at that voluntary sector scheme now for the whole third sector, it does show how the Welsh Government continues to work in partnership with the third sector for the benefit of Wales economically, socially and environmentally. But quite clearly, public sector budgets are tight and will be tight over the next few years. And the Welsh Government will do everything we can in our power to work with you to provide you with as much support for the third sector as we can. In fact, if anyone read my statement last week, which I made to the whole Assembly on Tuesday, announcing the draft budget, you will see a reflection of that in terms of our commitment to the third sector. We all have to face up to the reducing level of public sector budgets, consequential impact on all our funding levels. And we share the views of economists such as the new Nobel Prize-winning Professor Chris Pissarides, who said this weekend that the cuts need to be more gradual, the UK government cuts should be more gradual, and also the National Institute for Economic and Social Research calling for a plan B in terms of how we address the most difficult financial and economic circumstances that certainly we have all experienced, but goes back decades in terms of its implications for us as a nation, us the UK and globally, of course. The Welsh Government set out its intentions for this financial year as part of last year's budget. And that, of course, was the start of the 4-year comprehensive spending review. The start, of course, had to be reflected in last year's budget. And it's been broadly acknowledged that, given the scope of the settlement that we had from the UK government, that for us as a cabinet, for us as a government, we've recognised that it's important to protect our investment in frontline work, and that, of course, is what you do in the third sector. We've always said that we're not able to immunise the sector from the UK government's actions, but I think our proactive approach in engaging with the third sector, particularly with WCVA, in developing a joint communiqué showing the likely effect of the budget and the need to plan effectively has reaped dividends. On Tuesday, the 27th of September, the First Minister launched the Welsh Government's programme for government, and by now you all have had a chance to consider its contents. It does bring together indicators that we'll use to assess whether our actions are on track and measure progress on the big long-term challenges facing Wales. It's our roadmap for the rest of this Assembly term. And the programme marks a move away from an approach to measuring success that placed too much emphasis on the amount of money spent or the number of strategies launched, rather than the impact government is actually having on people's lives. Again, the theme of this conference, I'm sure, and your annual conference in a few weeks' time. The programme of government and the way that we've developed it and shaped it will allow us to review the evidence on how we're progressing towards our aims and identify where action may need to be adjusted over time to achieve our goals. The programme is not a static document. We'll update it annually so that it stays up to date, and we'll also report annually on progress. The emphasis is on being open and accountable. And it is an agenda for Wales, not just the Welsh Government. We can't deliver these outcomes alone. Success will depend on close working with partner organisations and people throughout Wales. And I know, as Graham has said, Carl Sargent will be addressing your annual conference later this year, and I know he'll want to cover some of this area with you in terms of that partnership. But as I said last week, I published our spending plans for the next 3 years. And these plans show how we will align our budgets to deliver the vision for Wales that we set out in the programme for government. It's the second year of the spending review period, so we're not starting from scratch. The plans we published last year provide the platform for this budget. We're building on it. We're still facing challenging financial and economic times, and these challenges continue to shape our spending plans. They informed our focus in this budget on growth and jobs. Our vision for Wales is for a fairer and more prosperous economy with better, more efficient public services that equip people to fulfil their potential, maximising their contribution to society and the economy. And clearly support for Welsh businesses is a key element of that. But this is part of the broader approach we're taking in Wales. We're also investing in health, education and stronger communities, themes that run through our programme of government. But more importantly for you, areas in which the third sector has a vital role to play. So our spending plans, which I outlined last week, include a number of key measures to support these priorities. We're investing an extra £75 million over the next 3 years in our new Jobs Growth Wales scheme. That's a scheme which will provide vital employment support to 4,000 young people every year through tailored training and employment opportunities, including in the third sector. And that's those 16 to 24-year-olds who did benefit from the Future Jobs Fund, which was cancelled by the UK government. And it is our Jobs Growth Wales scheme which will now provide those opportunities for those young people. In fact, the Minister, Leighton Andrews, is making a statement about that this afternoon. We're also maintaining our commitment to protect schools' funding. This means that over the spending review period, we will have invested an extra £185 million in schools. But without good health, none of us could play a full part in our society and economy. That's why we're investing an additional £288 million in the health service. We are protecting universal benefits, services that we know the people of Wales value, services that are helping to mitigate the impact of the financial pressures that the people of Wales are facing, services that make it as easy as possible for people to access jobs, training and services for their well-being. We're funding an additional 500 police community support officers to support our vision of stronger and safer and engaged communities. And we're rolling forward our previous spending plans for local government. And this will ensure that they continue to be much better funded than in England and that they're equipped to deliver our public services agenda. And this really did define our budget, which was passed in February of this year. And I think is very important in terms of the impact that has on you, those organisations that depend and work with and engage with local authorities in terms of funding streams. So we're rolling forward our previous spending plans for local government. In fact, the local government revenue settlement will be announced next week by Carl Sargent. Third sector organisations also play an important role in our vision for delivering better, more efficient public services. The exact implications of those proposals for you will become clearer over the coming weeks and months. And we're looking for ways to support the sector, working with WCVA to develop support via the Community Investment Fund, supported with £1 million from the Welsh Government, to provide access to finance for third sector organisations who seek to grow, providing funds for those organisations that seek to win contracts to deliver public services. Another key announcement that I made, part of the programme of government, is 55 million to expand and double the provision of Flying Start services. And of course, again, that is many of those services are delivered locally by third sector organisations. But we're also looking at our own working practices. We're looking at ways to work more collaboratively within the Welsh Government in managing our internal relationships where departments work with third sector partners. Ministers have agreed a system whereby organisations which are funded from more than 2 areas within the Welsh Government are identified, and then we share that and to enable sponsor divisions to be more mindful of the potential effect of any changes in funding arrangements or policy recommendations on work sponsored elsewhere within the Welsh Government where funding is provided to the third sector. We've also been reviewing the way we manage grants, and I know that for many in this audience this has raised real concerns, and I want to take the opportunity to be clear that grants continue to be an important part of how we fund many third sector organisations so that you can deliver services, achieve better outcomes for people in Wales and provide that continuity and that commitment that is so important in terms of the delivery of those services. Indeed, in many areas of Welsh life, grants are the most effective mechanism available to us. The review has highlighted some good practice, but also areas where we could do better, such as being clearer about what outcomes we expect from grant funding. You will recognise the importance of that, keeping monitoring requirements proportionate, but also having a better grasp of what different parts of the Welsh Government are granting to the same organisations. We've always had to consider what funding mechanisms we should use. Procurement may be the right choice in some cases, and it's fair to the different organisations which could provide a service which the Welsh Government requires that should be considered as a route, but also obliges us to look afresh at what is being offered and how benefits can be demonstrated. But our existing guidance clearly spells out the criteria for assessing which funding mechanism is likely to be the right one. And let me be clear today, there is no policy change. It is important that we, in the wider sense, deliver in terms of fairness, managing the risk of non-compliance with the law. But in terms of policy change, as I said, the grant-giving mechanism and route is the one which we have to be robust about in terms of monitoring and delivery, but is the one that we see in Wales very much as the Welsh way. I want to say a few words about my equality duties, and I think this is very important, being the Minister for Finance and Minister for Equalities as well, addressing this audience today, because I am delighted that the specific public sector equality duties for Wales had that successful passage through the last Assembly term. It does make the Welsh Government the first government in the UK to bring its duties into force. And of course, those duties will help us promote equality, tackle discrimination and prejudice, help build a fairer and more tolerant society in Wales, and provide the basis for securing equality in the provision of public services, making sure that services meet the needs of everyone. I was very pleased today to speak to the Petitions Committee, meet the Petitions Committee, and to announce a framework for action for independent living in Wales, which of course had come forward from Disability Wales as an issue for government. And that framework for action, I do believe, for disabled people is a hallmark of what we're trying to achieve, and the specific equality duties help us deliver on that. The specific duties for Wales contain a provision, and it's only in Wales that this is contained, for involvement, engagement and consultation with people affected by the decisions taken by public authorities. And that's what makes the specific duties in Wales different from other parts of the UK. I'm proud of that fundamental principle, and I know that you would welcome that, and I'm sure you will therefore be engaged, as you will be, in terms of delivering on that duty, helping to deliver on that duty. The duty requires public authorities, including the Welsh Government, to engage, involve and consult those who share one or more of the protected characteristics, and not just those who represent their interests in the development work around the duties. And those duties will help us to focus on delivery, what is important to the people who are affected by our plans, so we can build on the good work that's already been done and what's been done in Wales to reduce inequalities. And we'll be seeking, as I said, the help of our partners in the third sector to engage with their stakeholders, and would like to I want to take this opportunity to ask the sector for help in taking that vital work forward. So looking into our shared futures, we all have to be and are mindful about the level of public sector budgets, the consequential impact on all our funding levels. And for me, as the Minister for Finance, I came from the voluntary sector, as it was then. I came from the third sector into politics, and through various ministerial portfolios of challenging as they were and have been in terms of health and education, social services, equalities. But to be in the position of being finance minister at this most challenging time, I think does help me bring all my experiences together in this difficult job that I've got. It's not just a question of nerves of steel, Graham. It's actually about being clear about why you're there and what you're in this job to do, and making sure you can take people with you. And that, of course, is crucial in my role as leader of the House as well. And I do think that we can work together, particularly with the third sector, because of our value base, shared value base, to make sure that, as we said last week in response to my statement, the budget is about the language of priorities, and how we can then be clear what our priorities should be and understand the evidence of who is being hit hardest by the cuts and respond appropriately and effectively. So I think it's a dynamic time, it's a challenging time, but also it is a time when we really all can rise up to the measure of what we can deliver together. I know you're focusing so impressively on fundraising, and I'm obviously involved in lots of local organisations myself as trustee and as AM, and recognising that we need to make sure that we get to the right place, right people at the right time. We have the right information, we have the partners who are going to help us, and that we do articulate what our causes are, that chimes with particularly the social conscience of the nation. And I think it is about understanding and being realistic that with the best will in the world, there's only so much public money to go around, and that we all need to work more collaboratively to tailor what we can provide to the services that funders are looking for. And this doesn't mean that individual organisations have to abandon or sideline principal causes, but they may need to look around to look for more like-minded organisations they can work with to develop a bid plan to deliver what funders are looking to support. And I'm very well aware, and again back to local experience as well as at a national level, how this is progressing. Very well aware that that collaboration is going on, and there's a lot coming out of today. The outcomes of today, I'm sure, will be more collaboration of that kind. Because these kinds of conferences will provide useful steps in the process. We need to take that strategic view of funding needs based on outcomes so that constrained budgets are effectively directed. And the Welsh Government, together with our partners in the public, third and private sectors, must work together in the process of sometimes redesigning, reshaping, being innovative about the delivery of our services to ensure we get maximum value out of our resources that are available to us in the future. But we must continue to explore and develop shared goals to support those people and communities most in need and encourage innovative and effective practice. I think when I presented our budget, our first budget in these constrained times in February, I said the key challenges, the key objectives were to support vulnerable people and to work towards the renewal of our economy. Those are hand in glove, and they stay with us in terms of our objectives and our vision for Wales. And I do believe in partnership we can tackle these new economic and social challenges together. Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you very much, Minister. I'm sure we're all pleased to hear of that reassertion of the principles and practice of grants. I was particularly interested in the framework for independent living, because I know that's been a particular issue for many for some time, and also of the groundbreaking work that you've been doing on equality and equality impact statement, and I'm sure people will respond to the challenge of implementing the equality duty. We've got time for a couple of questions. So who would like to ask a question? There.
Hi, I'm Rachel Mingington from Llamau, and that's a homelessness organisation for young people. With the increasing focus now on funding to enable disadvantaged people to access employment, I just wonder if the Minister would comment really on the focus on employment as an outcome and how that really encourages partners in the public sector and the private sector to focus on what could be unkindly termed low-hanging fruit to enable the people with the least and the shortest journey back to employment, and to focus their work on those groups, which really leaves the most vulnerable and disadvantaged people as far, if not further, from the labour market. And I wonder if the very welcome changes to funding in terms of the impact of that funding on outcomes could focus on a wider range of outcomes and not simply the employment at the end.
Right, thank you very much, Rachel. A fantastic organisation, Llamau. I'll say that to anyone who asks me a question, I'm sure. But I do...
encourage more questions,
I think the 75 million that I announced last week for the Jobs Growth Wales scheme is very much focusing at how we can reach out to those 16 to 24-year-olds who, as we speak, too many of them are already unemployed and losing daily, if they are unemployed, so much of the benefits of their education up to that point, if they haven't been able to continue into training and education, further or higher education, and into jobs and apprenticeships. So we are focusing particularly at those young people who could become NEET if we didn't focus on them, and looking at their skills needs. And also, I think we are learning from the Future Jobs Fund. We're certainly going to be incentivising employers in the private sector as well as the public and third sectors to look at the panoply of opportunities that we need to give to those young people to get them back on track. And then obviously to open up opportunities in terms of pathways to apprenticeships as well as into other routes to training and jobs. So, you know, I think you will, I'm sure you will be pleased to read the statement this afternoon, hear the statement from Leighton Andrews, because it's precisely focusing at that group of young people.
Okay. Another question?
Janetta Jones and Heather Curve from North Wales. Just to, I suppose, reinforce really, people are talking about an outcome in terms of employment, and yet the social care sector that I work in is a major employer throughout Wales, yet is effectively excluded from any meaningful discussions on sustainable employment creation. We upskill the workforce. We're trying desperately to create sustainable jobs at above the minimum wage, yet, due partly to no fault of their own, the local authorities with whom we contract are almost engaged in a race to the bottom in terms of awarding prices for contracts. You know, we're in 0 hours contracts, minimum wage, cutting back on training and that sort of thing. So the sector is desperate, certainly the sector I'm in, trying to go in one direction, and yet we're being held back by sort of lack of, I suppose, a broad breadth of policy looking at the whole of employment in Wales, not just a scheme here, a scheme there, support here and there. There's a huge sector in social care doing a lot of this, but we can't do it if we keep getting cut all the time.
Well, I think, Janetta, it's the social care sector is critical to a civilised society in terms of particularly protecting vulnerable people. And Graham mentioned our equality impact assessment that we undertook in the budget. And as a result of that, if you recall, earlier on this year, we actually agreed to allocate more money to social services, which of course then does have an impact on the revenue support grant to local authorities, because we recognised that if we didn't put more money into social services, which might have been at the expense of more money into the health service, but if we didn't put more money into social services, it would have an adverse impact on so many vulnerable people and their carers, but also because of our commitment to supporting the social care sector. And the social care sector is about the workforce. And of course, we have worked with WLGA to try and get this toolkit in terms of fee setting, and it's a hugely pressurised policy area. But Gwenda Thomas, the Deputy Minister for Social Services, you will have heard her speak passionately, as you do, about social care. And I do believe that we have protected, as far as we can, that area of the budget. And the fact that we have got to putting more money into the health service inevitably, but the job opportunities and the training and the quality that we want from social care has to be reflected in our revenue support grant.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We've got time for just one more question. Who would like to ask?
Hi there, I'm Jason Dunlop, the Chief Executive of Cardiff University Students' Union. Just wondered if the Minister would comment on whether there's some capacity building that can be done between higher education and this sector. We currently have the situation where we have vast numbers of students who want to engage in volunteering opportunities, but not the ability to build capacity to engage them, and whether there's some further partnerships that need to be built between higher education and government to provide those opportunities and to give students the opportunity and Wales an opportunity to draw on that capacity.
Well, thank you very much, Jason. I don't know whether what used to be called CUS still exists, Cardiff University Social Service. It was very much a body which many universities have to engage students in volunteering opportunities. I think I'm not passing the buck here at all, but I do think this is something that if there is an issue, we're not using that capacity appropriately, that perhaps that's something that we could discuss with WCVA in terms of how we can make those links more effective.
Can I just add that we have developed an internship scheme for the third sector, which should be able to provide really a vast range of opportunities for nearly any student that wants to within the multiplicity of organisations that exist in the sector. So maybe we can have a chat about it at lunchtime. Okay, right. Well, thank you very much. I know you have to go, and thanks for being with us today. and giving us that speech and words of encouragement and recognition. The speech will be available later today, so it'll be with you, and doubtless we can develop those words of encouragement and commitments in future meetings. So thank you very much for coming.